So yeah, I'm talking a little bit about something that I think touches all of us. This is not a how-to roadmap. I don't have time for that. But maybe we can think about them a little bit differently today. Quick note, there's going to be a couple exercises, so if you have a piece of paper and a pen, keep them handy. You will need them. I want to start out with showing this as an example. You may have heard of this product, Google Allo, right? Because the world needs lots of chat applications. And I'm not trying to pick on them, but they launched it, and 2 years later, they pretty much shut it down, or putting it in a sort of a pause mode, and so to speak. And the quote in The Verge that struck me was that the product as a whole has not achieved the level of traction we'd hoped for. Raise your hand if that applies to any feature or product that you have actually had, right? Yeah, I'm totally guilty of this, right? But this makes me ask the question, why do we ship the wrong thing, right? What's going on here? I mean, we just heard from Dan and his framework. We know we have lean startup, which is supposed to be a great way to do things, right? Build, measure, learn, right? But what's often happening, I think, when I talk with a lot of product teams, is this. Right? We're kind of building and shipping and building and shipping. And so I wanted to learn more about this, and I dug around a little bit. I found this paper that was published last year on software development waste. This was published in 2017. We've had decades of product development practice, but yet we're still maybe shipping the wrong thing, right? Let me zoom in on the first sentence. The engineers are depressed. Right? And it talks about there's waste everywhere. And it categorizes waste in a number of different things and compares it to lean software and Toyota Lean. But the thing that struck me most was that 30% of these are essentially around building the wrong product. Dave Cancel stood on this stage maybe a couple of years ago and kind of said, I'm either going to lie to you or I'm going to build the wrong thing and disappoint you, right? And he was talking about roadmaps. And so are the roadmaps to blame, right? Is that an issue? Well, if you just search on Medium, you realize that roadmaps, well, they're a train wreck, or they suck, or there's a problem with them, or you should do something else aside from road mapping, or that they're a total waste of time, right? But then you might find some things that, well, maybe it's not the roadmap, maybe we're just setting it up wrong. Or that maybe if you want to be a product manager, you really should build a roadmap. Or maybe you actually have to build a roadmap that everyone understands. OK, cool, right? We've run dozens of workshops, my co-authors and I, and we've asked or invited the participants to write letters to their roadmaps. And so I'll share a few of these letters with you. Dear roadmap, I can't do this anymore. We have the same problems every 3 months. We review nearly the same mix of features. It's Groundhog Day, right? We don't have alignment on our strategy. I am done. Dear roadmap, first sentence, I hate you. Whoa, that's pretty powerful, right? You're rushing too much. We're comparing us to the competition. And this is probably one of my favorites. Dear roadmap, I've been putting so much into this relationship. I don't get any value from you. You're always out of date, right? Because that never happens. There's no way to get all this information. You're all about solutions. You're never good enough. This is it. I'm going back to Microsoft Project. So clearly, there's something wrong with roadmaps. Now, let me just roll the clock back a little bit and share with you my early roadmap brilliance, right? Because let's face it, we all didn't start with brilliant roadmaps, right? So here's essentially what mine looked like. I know, right? You can all go home now. So this was basically a template that was given to me. Hey, make this. And I can't say I've worked anywhere famous like Google or Facebook or anything like that. I started product in PerkinElmer, which is a bioscience company. So if you think getting your front end and back end to work together is hard, try getting hardware, software, biology, and chemistry to work together as a first-time product manager. So anyways, this is the template I was essentially given. So mine looked exactly. I tried to get the exact file. I couldn't find it in my archives, but I found this. So this is close enough. And it had some product strategy along with it as well. And you think, like, build the leading position. OK, is that really product strategy? So fast forward a few years, I'm like, all right, I think I got this. Maybe I'm getting a little better at it. Maybe I was a little too confident, because mid-2006 I put this together, and I was presenting this to my core team, and then I ended up sending it out to the whole company, about 75 to 80 people. It was a biotech startup in the Boston area. And the next day, I pretty much set myself on fire. I'd say about 80 to 90% of the company was pissed at me, especially the sales team, because why wasn't this going to happen then? What about this? The marketing team was pissed off. Like, everyone was just really mad. And I was like, well, wait, I thought I was trying to help give you some clarity of what's going on here, right? And so, wait, are roadmaps good? Are they bad? Well, in 2006, I was like, this sucks. Right, so let's fast forward a little bit back down to today, is that, well, what is a roadmap? If we were to define it, and we asked this in our workshops, and we get a lot of different definitions. In fact, if I asked 1,600 of you, I'd probably get 3,000 definitions. And because they all look different. And the form of what it looks like isn't what the roadmap really is, right? They could be a number of different things, and it's totally fine. But I'll tell you what it's not. It's not a release plan. That's what a lot of people think a roadmap is, a release plan, and it is not. It's also not a listing of features and dates. Let me tell you a story of a company on the East Coast, just outside of Philadelphia, called WAITAMINUTE. Now, if you're a CrossFit athlete, I am as well. Don't worry, I'm not trying to doctrine you. So WAITAMINUTE isn't trying to make you all CrossFit. It actually helps CrossFit gyms, because what it turns out is that CrossFit is a bit anti-tech. And so the CEO's vision was like, hey, we could bring technology into this sphere and help these CrossFit boxes be better. And they wanted to have, they valued transparency. They wanted to let their clients know that, hey, this is what we're working on. This is when we're going to deliver it to you. And so they put this public roadmap with essentially a listing of features and dates. All right, here's the thing. Here's when it's coming. And you can actually go on their website right now and take a look at it. As you flip the cards, you can see more detailed descriptions of what they have there. And I talked to the product team, and it turns out as they started to do this, they were actually struggling keeping up with committing to those dates. They actually they realized their dates were way, way off. They initially just put out a quarter, and they said, okay, we actually stretched the entire quarter out to the entire year, because there's no way you can do all this stuff in one quarter. And so they're building and shipping all these features, and they realized they couldn't actually go deal with any of the tech debt that they started accumulating, because they'd committed to all these other features. And so what it turns out is they felt like they weren't actually delivering value to the customer. They stopped being able to commit to the dates that they had. So they really kind of struggled with this of just features and dates. And they've moved away from having the dates. So if you go there now and you take a look at it, the top just has coming soon. So they've started to move away from that, right? And so you're probably thinking in your head, thanks, Todd, but what happens when we remove features and dates? Isn't that what's supposed to be on a roadmap, right? Well, because a roadmap isn't necessarily supposed to be features and dates. Sure, the features might be part of it to some degree, but I actually want to maybe change your mind and how you think about that. A roadmap's much more about strategy. It's communicating your strategy and your product strategy and where you go. And about a year ago, Jana Bastos stood here and basically said, hey, look, we're product people. We make prototypes. Why don't we use that same skill set of prototyping on our roadmap, right? We should totally be doing that. And it's a statement of intent and direction, where we're going, right? Let's take that metaphor literally for just a second. We're at Symphony Hall here in San Francisco. If we want to go to Symphony Hall in LA, there's a number of different ways we could take. We have a destination. We have a vision or mission of where we're going. We have different pathways we could take to get there. And maybe we might commit to a certain pathway. We might commit to a flight. But it's not like we can go tap on the pilot's shoulder, hey, can you drop me off? I want to stop in Monterey and take a train from there. We can't really do that, right? So roadmaps do give us that level of direction. So we might have to commit to a certain point until we can change. So roadmaps is how you're going to realize that vision of maybe getting to LA or having all the CrossFit gyms techified and efficient, right? And I think that the thing here that I've learned from interviewing almost 100 product teams and working with dozens of others is that roadmap and release plan are two very different artifacts, right? That roadmap is about the outcomes, and that release plan is about the specific outputs, the features you might ship. So let's talk about what makes it. I'm going to put my pracademic hat on, my Professor C. Todd. Actually, during the day, I'm C. Todd Lombardo. During the night, I'm Professor Lombardo. So I'll put my Professor Lombardo hat on and talk about 5 primary components of a roadmap. 5. That's it. If you have these 5 things, you have a roadmap. I see a lot of people looking to take shots. So I'll take it. Wait a second. All right, so I'll walk through them. Vision. What's the future world look like with your product, right? Oftentimes I joke, this is the movie voice, in a world where, right? That's what your vision is, right? Let's take an example, right? If Google has this company mission of organizing the world's information, I'm kind of using mission and vision as a similar, but it's about that sort of destination, right? Google has a number of products. Each of those have a product vision. Chromes, YouTubes, Androids, those are essentially product missions or product visions, and there is a relationship between those product visions and what the company vision is. And as product people, we own that vision. As Christina said earlier, we own that vision, right? If you don't have it, you should make it. And once you've made it, you own it, right? You are the one who's pushing your product towards realizing that vision. Another great example is GitLab. If you're from GitLab, well done. They have this all on their website, GitLab direction, and they publish their vision specifically around allowing everyone to collaborate on digital content with a single application, frictionless from planning to monitoring. Right? Essentially, that's the bolded statements in there. And the other thing that they do really well is they start to tie it to objectives and key results. We have had plenty of talk about OKRs this morning, right? And business objectives are a big part of your roadmap, right? What is your product going to accomplish? How will it be measurably different? And so Stellar did a really good job at this as well. Stellar did a great job at just outlining this in a blog post. Their roadmap was a blog post. See, form doesn't necessarily matter. So they talked about different goals, and some of those goals had secondary objectives. And it's all just written out in one blog post. Third component is timeframes. What happens and when? And timeframes allude to some kind of prioritization as well. What's going to happen first, second, third? Because the things that have to happen now are the ones that are more important. When you can be a bit more specific, like Q1, Q2, Q3. Or you can take an approach like ProdPad uses, which is now, next, and later. Much broader. Gives you a little bit more flexibility in how you do things. Disclaimer is also very important, whether it's a public roadmap or internal only. I cannot stress how important it is. We actually had a lot of debate amongst the co-authors on this. You have to have a disclaimer on there. Why? Because like a financial statement, it's a forward-looking statement. And things are going to change, right? So let's make sure we manage those expectations, because a lot of what we do is manage expectations, right? And this disclaimer can help us with that. It's a small part, but an important part. Even GitHub's public, their platform roadmap has a disclaimer on the bottom, right? Very, very important. This one's public, but again, my guess is there may be an internal-facing one that might also have a disclaimer. And the one I want to spend a little bit more time on is themes. Dan just talked a lot about problem space, and that's a lot of what I want to get into with themes. Themes are an organization of those work areas for your product. But like I did before, I'll tell you what they're not. They're not just a listing or grouping of features, right? So what are they? Well, they're usually some kind of combination of problems, needs, or objectives, right? Okay, so problem, floor is wet. Need, I need a mop. Objective, keep the floor dry, right? It's an oversimplification, but to at least make the point. And so Dan suggested asking why, and I love that he talked about that. But I sometimes think people don't dig into it enough. So if we take this water on the floor example, problem is there's water on the floor, the solution is there's a mop. So okay, let's ask why. Well, the pipe's leaking. What's the solution? Well, we can fix the pipe. Wait. Why is the pipe leaking in the first place? Oh, the pressure's too high. Solution, lower the pressure. Wait, why is the pressure too high? Oh, pressure regulator's busted. Okay, replace the pressure regulator. You can see where this goes, right? A lot of teams might ask why once, maybe twice, right? Dig into it even further. Really, really dig in, because then you really want to get to what's really going on here. Because if you keep coming in week after week and there's water on the floor, it might be the problem with the inspection schedule. We went from inspection schedule to water on the floor. Those are very different things, right? So your roadmap should have that level of problem on it. Here's an example of a roadmap that the company that I'm leading product at right now, Vempathy, we use machine learning and AI to help product teams make better products. Every single theme on our roadmap has a problem and an objective. Next slide, please. Awesome. And even we also have some what ideas or suggestions might we have to solve that problem. Let's circle back to our friends over at WAITAMINUTE. Right? So they had all these features, right? Invoice auto bill, multiple payments, et cetera, and so on. And they actually have gotten away from this. We're no longer going to dictate these features, right? We're just going to look for an objective, right? Reduce support costs by a particular percentage. OK, cool, right? How they get there, well, remember, features are intended to solve some kind of problem, get you some kind of outcome, right? This could be placed into some kind of theme, like improve the invoicing options, or maybe expand payment types. Okay? So it's no longer about themes. And their product team said, well, look, we don't know which features we're going to build. We give the teams the freedom to figure it out. Right? So you're probably like, wait, what are we going to build? How do we know what to build? I think the question Dan said was, engineers have to build something, designers have to design something. What are we going to do? Well, this is where we need to break things down a little bit further. There are outputs, outcomes, and impact. And I want to break them down a little bit. So outcomes, that's the features, what you produce, the product, right? Whatify example might be the new invoice auto bill, right? But then we say, well, what problem does that feature solve? That's good. You want to take that a step further? Ask the question, if we solve that problem, what's the outcome we want to see? Right? So this is where you want to drive to the outcome. You want to separate the output and the outcome. So in the Whatify example, the outcome would be less support calls around invoices. Cool. That's behavior change in your stakeholders, users, et cetera. And then the metrics, or the impacts, would be the metrics. How do we know we've actually done this? What's been the increase or decrease to our business, right? So a 12% decrease to our support costs. Awesome. You may recognize these as objectives and key results. And again, a theme might be like improving invoicing options, right? The theme is kind of like a headline to the problem or need, right? If you think about headlining something, it's really what themes are good at. They're headlines to the problems, needs, outcomes. And they all need to come into a strategic hierarchy. So as Christina mentioned earlier, product people own the vision, right? How does that all align? And this is a little bit inspired by Teresa Torres, her opportunity solution tree, right? You've got a product vision that supports your company mission. You've got objectives, which are helping you get to your product vision. And then from there, you might have themes, which get you to this. And then from there, you may have some features or solutions that get you to this, all right? And so the roadmap would be either the outcomes or objectives and themes, right? Your outputs, your features, those might be on your release plan. Right? You can take this a step further, like Teresa's opportunity solution tree, and have experiments. And those things could actually be on your release plan, perhaps, or maybe an experiment plan, things you're going to do. Okay? So I know I said this wasn't going to be a how-to roadmap talk, but I'm going to give you the sort of very overarching how to roadmap in 30 seconds. Okay? So first, you got a bunch of inputs, right? Support, sales, customer feedback, all of that stuff. Pull that all. You got to get the data together. That data can be a number of different forms. Organize them, prioritize them into the themes. Once you've got them into the themes and they're prioritized, and that, don't get me wrong, this takes an awful lot. You then put them onto your roadmap. I often do the now, next, later. Maybe it's Q1, Q2, Q3, first half, second half, third half, et cetera, however far out your roadmap needs to go, whatever time frames you choose. And then once that's prioritized, then map the early ones out, the highest priority ones out to some kind of sprint plan or release plan or project plan. All right? So in all the workshops I've done with this or with Design Sprint or other things, a lot of people ask me, and this came up a lot yesterday in the leadership forum, is, awesome, how do I do this? How do I get this to happen in my company? How do I convince my boss about X or Y or Z? And so the thing that I often say is, well, we need to actually be a crisis negotiator. And it's because if you've got a hostage that has, or a hostage situation, terrorist has 12 hostages, they want $10 million. You can't say, well, I've got 5 million, give me 6 hostages, we'll call it a day, right? Doesn't work like that. So you got to need a winner-take-all kind of thing. You got to get all 12 hostages out and not pay them a dime. So you have to negotiate like a hostage negotiator, crisis negotiator. One way to do that is shuttle diplomacy. Shuttle diplomacy was, dating myself a little bit, was the early 1970s, 1974. Secretary of State at the time, Henry Kissinger, engaged in this shuttle diplomacy between the Israelis, Egyptians, around the Arab-Israeli conflict at the time. There was this war of Yom Kippur. There was a whole bunch of struggles there, and they were so pissed off at each other they wouldn't meet in the same room. So Henry Kissinger went between them, sort of shuttled between the different parties. And the thing that happens when you do that is you get the, hey, tell me what's wrong. Yeah, those guys are crazy, aren't they? Yeah, tell me what's wrong, right? You kind of get those honest candor. And so you make your stakeholder map or your stakeholder atom, right? Where's you, your product team? Where is everybody else, right? Map that out and then start doing your one-on-ones with all of them. All right, first you want to do one-on-ones with them. And then at some point you might want to bring them all back around. Maybe have a final prioritization meeting, or hey, I've got a draft of my roadmap, right? It's a good thing to do for your one-on-one. Got a draft of my roadmap. You want to take a look at it? You want to help me finish it, right? My co-author Bruce did this brilliant thing where he just sat outside the water cooler one day with a water cooler, and there was coffee station. And these one-on-one meetings don't need to be like half-hour meetings. They can be literally 5-minute conversations. And he did that one day and did almost all his one-on-ones on one day. He got everybody on his stakeholder atom. So the other thing is to get tactical in your negotiations, right? I'll tell you a story when I was leading product at WorkBar. The CEO just came back from a business trip, and he wanted to expand out of Boston into another city. And we had a software, a space, and services in terms of different product areas. And he got all excited about going to Toronto and going to another country. And I sort of said, all right, well, how are we going to go to another country when we haven't even expanded in the United States? And he would answer that. And I'd say, OK, well, how are we going to do that, plus also keep the same objectives we'd already established? And he starts answering, telling me exactly how I'm going to do this, right? I said, OK, all right. So and what I did is I then summed up everything back to him. I said, OK, so you're telling me we need to do this, and this, and this, and this, and this. And he goes, that's right. So a couple of things to do in saying no without saying no, right? It's just ask that question, how are we going to do that? How are we going to accomplish these things if we still have these goals, right? And this is a lot of how crisis negotiators work, right? All right, give me $1 million or the girl dies in 60 seconds. You're like, how can I give you $1 million in 60 seconds, right? You're buying time, and you're also giving them the illusion of control, right? You also want to get to a that's right. So when I summed everything up back to Bill, he's like, yeah, that's right. So I know earlier, I think it was Cindy who said, yeah, get to your right. And I was like, I don't think you want your right. You want that's right. Because you don't want it to be about you and them. You want it to be about the thing, right? That's right is a clarification that you're on the money. So get to that's right. And then oftentimes you hear about negotiations of getting to yes, right? Oh, I'll get to yes, get to yes, get to yes, right? Well, in that conversation with Bill, I said, so Bill, does this mean we're moving away from our objectives we had? Oh, no, we still need to do those. Oh, does this mean you've raised another round of funding? Oh, no, we have to do it with the same amount of funding we have. OK, right? So what I was trying to do is by getting him to say no to those things, I was understanding what roadblocks might be in the way. So get to no first, because every no will help you figure out what you have to do to get to yes, right? I got him to say no. Later on in that, I said, look, let's go talk about it later. And turns out he must have thought about it because he maybe brought it up once before, and we didn't talk about doing it because his expansion was a very different product and had a lot of ramifications for what we were going to do for product. So get to no. Don't worry about getting to yes. All right. So I mentioned earlier, grab a piece of paper. We're going to do a couple exercises. So I'm going to channel my inner Christine Wadke, and I want to do 2 things with you guys. So how to relaunch this, right? So first challenge, in 15 seconds, I want you to draw smart people. Ready? Go. All right, that was fast, right? Maybe you have a picture of Einstein, maybe you have something. I know Badan had an Einstein on his cover slide. All right, so that was drawing smart people. Now let's see challenge number 2. Challenge number 2 is make everyone smarter in 15 seconds. Ready? Go. A lot of you just kind of sitting there like, huh, I don't know what to do right now, right? So, well, let's talk about these 2 challenges, right? What was a little bit different about them? One was really about execution, about output, about making a thing. The second one was much more focused on outcomes. One's harder than the other, right? We can ship features left, right, and center. We can output stuff like crazy if we really want, right? Just like Google had shipped Allo, but yet 2 years later is shutting it down, right? But getting to those outcomes are a lot more valuable. They're certainly not easy either, right? And it's because product management and project management are not the same thing. They need each other, though. It's very, very important, right? In fact, I think it was earlier somebody said you're the project coordinator, right? You are the coordinator along with this. And so we need to separate those outcomes and outputs, and we have to have 2 artifacts that do that as well, right? The roadmap managing us to those outcomes of what outcome we want to see if we solve those problems, and the sprint plan or release plan managing those outputs. Because at the end of the day, you might finish a project or a sprint, but your product is never done. And with that, I thank you so much for spending time listening to me.